Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy. I'll be hosting today's show. Up first here on our hazardous weather graphic, got wind chill advisories out now, replacing the blizzard warning from yesterday here along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Actually, the entire shaded area here is under the influence of a wind chill advisory. Winds west-southwest 15 to 30 miles per hour. Wind chills 55 degrees below zero tonight until 6 a.m. Sunday morning. Next ends over just about all of the Brooks range here. More in the minus 50 degree range for those wind chills back here to the west with a little less wind. And then winds dropping down enough here that no advisories are out for the central and western Arctic coast. Also no advisories, watches, warnings for anywhere else in the state here over the central, interior, Aleutians, and the Panhandle. So moving on to satellite imagery. Not too bad high pressure and control out here over the Bering Sea. A lot more in the way of low clouds here than what this depicts across the Bering with the cold air coming down, but the higher clouds signifying the more significant weather showing up quite nicely here along this frontal boundary out to the west here with the low just on or just off this picture there. That's going to be moving north and then eventually northwestward, so this entire portion of the front will be weakening here over the next 24 to 36 hours. Otherwise, you can see the flow coming up and over the top of the big ridge here over the Bering Sea, and then pulling some higher stuff and a little bit of moisture, light snow, fog. St. Lawrence Island today, back to the Bering Strait, but quite cold. Chukchi Sea, western Arctic coast into the interior, though, as evident by the light area, the ground so cold here, well below zero, even into the afternoon, all the way back up to the Arctic coast. Winds again pretty gusty there. Temperatures running 5 to 15 to 20 below zero temperature-wise, and add the wind into that, and you're getting wind chills as low as 55 below zero. And again, that'll continue out through tonight. Of course, a lot less wind here over the interior. A lot more clouds as well, with areas of light snow through the eastern interior portion of the state, and also around Yakutat with this patch of clouds right through here. And we've got a really weak front down toward Dixon Entrance here. That brought some periods of light rain today over the southern southeast coastal areas, and then kind of back up and offshore, mixing with rain and then falling as snow around Yakutat to about almost as far west as Cape Yakataga, and then onto the east there in the area of snow up there in Canada, and over the eastern interior with those clouds, kind of a remaining weak trough here, both at the surface and aloft. Really not moving a whole lot. We've got easterly flow here, the gradient kind of holding it back a little bit, and winds beginning to pick up through the passes of the western central Alaska range here a little bit with the, as you can see, a tightening of the gradient there. Had a few snow showers, mostly offshore Kodiak Island and around that area, as well as the North Gulf Coast, mostly along or off the coast of the Kenai Peninsula. Really nothing significant even where they fell. And we had this patch of light snow and fog again from St. Lawrence Island up into the Bering Strait areas. Strong high pressure out here over the Bering from the Russian Far East, down, ridging down across the Perbolos right into the eastern Aleutians. Light winds, dry conditions there, and this strong ridge keeping the systems out to the west at bay and actually shunning them off to the north and northwest. And we'll see tonight after the, well, they've had rain and snow to just rain this afternoon across the western Aleutians with winds gusting as high as 65 miles per hour out there toward Attu and Shemya. And for tonight, that'll begin to weaken. The whole front starts to weaken, the low pulling off to the northwest, leaving this front kind of in place and with less support. So winds will gradually diminish. Precipitation will continue, though. Periods of mostly rain here, possibly getting as far east as Adak. Just a risk at this point. High pressure holding over the northern Bering Sea. Kind of a weak trough right in this position here, keeping some clouds areas of light snow and fog again. That same pattern from St. Lawrence Island today, kind of shifting southward, so getting a little bit better there, visibility ceiling-wise there for the Bering Strait areas and the Chukchi Sea. Not too bad here over the southwest interior. Maybe a few snow showers right along the southwest coast. Togiak Bay, Cape Newenham, up to Kipnik possibly. Still some lingering snow showers, mostly on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise clear and cold. Central western interior here, and a trough scooting down from the northwest. Probably will bring increase in the clouds and the risk of some flurries there to the western, possibly central Arctic coast. Nothing significant, definitely nothing heavy, just some lower visibilities and ceilings with that as it drops in. Staying pretty good off to the west there. Again, the wind chill advisories here through tonight until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, and this lingering area of snow hangs in over the mostly from the eastern Alaska range northward there all the way toward Kaktovik, but east of Deadhorse, and stays fair or south central Alaska, just some variable clouds. Winds tending to increase through the passes of the mountains here across all of southern Alaska, North Gulf Coast. Look for those winds through the Copper River Delta to start picking up, as well as on in across Lynn Canal and Glacier Bay. This front edging northward with some areas of light precipitation with it. Nothing heavy expected there at all. And southeast flow should keep it mostly in the form of rain south of the front. You're getting some kind of a mixture to the north. And we got a trough. Looks like it's trying to develop here just southeast of Kodiak Island. That'll probably generate some snow showers back to the west across the Barren Islands. Maybe something could kick off there in Kachemak Bay or Southern Cook Inlet, but again, nothing widespread or significant. A little bit more in the way of moisture here. This is backing northwestward to about this position late tonight, and then tomorrow afternoon that'll continue to slide west-northwest. So look for a chance of snow to move into Prince William Sound to Passage Canal, possibly reaching Portage, and maybe even some light snow showers starting to develop as far west of the Chugach Mountains into the Talkeetnas. Maybe, but that's about it. Otherwise, variably cloudy to partly clear here, partly sunny for Cook Inlet tomorrow. Just a risk of some snow showers for Kodiak Island again, and again, channeled areas here picking up those winds, and also for the central western Alaska range, but less wind back to the west, cold temperatures all the way up to the Arctic coast. There you can see gradient really dropping off, so the wind chill advisories will end due to a lack of wind, not so much warming temperatures, and even less in the way of snow here over the eastern interior. Chances will diminish throughout the afternoon. Back out to the west, that front really weakening and stuck out here over the Aleutians. There's a chance of rain, Adak and Atka. Wind's not a factor at all with this. The gradient now up into Russia where it belongs. So I have this weak disturbance right through here, but nothing significant with that either. Just some clouds and a few flurries. Scattered snow showers, Alaska Peninsula. Outlook for Monday. Remnants of that front right through here now. Another one develops and moves farther to the west, north farther to the west. Weak system right through here again. Mostly cloudy skies, fog, flurries. Probably staying out of the north of the Pribilofs, up along and off the southwest coast. St. Lawrence Island, the most vulnerable there, but clear and cold over the western central interior areas. And this moisture coming back to the west here looks like a mostly cloudy chance of light snow showers, south central Alaska, maybe some flurry conditions. Better chance of snow North Gulf Coast here into the northern panhandle with this trough right through here, remnants of that frontal boundary. And still a chance of snow up over the northeast interior as well. Kodiak Island, northwest flow, keeping it mostly dry there and chilly with the snow showers up over the Barren Islands into possibly southern Cook Inlet. Seldovia, Homer, chance of some light snow at times, light snow showers. Same thing for the Alaska Peninsula. Low temperatures tonight, getting down there, minus 25 to 30 for the Tanana Valley, and warmer here due to the cloud cover over the northeast interior, but down to 20 to 30 to 35 below, north slope in the Arctic coast. 15 to 20 below back to the northwest, and you can see the 0-degree isotherm all the way out to the coastline here, and teens to mid-20s for the Alaska Peninsula, and 20s to mid-30s for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow looking like this, below zero west and north of the Alaska range, and single numbers southern Alaska to near freezing along the coast. Same thing for the Panhandle, maybe lower 40s. Lows the next morning, even colder here, big area of say 25 to 35, maybe even some areas down 40, 42 below here, back in the west and northwest interior, well below zero along the Arctic coast, and lows in the 20s for the Panhandle. Highs in the afternoon shaping up like this, well below zero over the interior, coldest on the north slope. Panhandle will be one of the warmer areas, lower to mid 30s there.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Our first flying weather graphic showing IFR here from around Kaktovik southward across eastern Brooks Range all the way down to the north side of the eastern Alaska Range, including Eagle on down to Northway Tok. Marginal into the Tanana Valley, probably IFR there from along or north of the White Mountains up into the Yukon Flats. Big area of VFR to the west here, all the way out to the southwest coast, and you pick up some marginal VFR there from the Alaska Peninsula and up to St. Lawrence Island. Another patch of VFR, IFR that front stuck out in the west. And for the southeast coast, marginal VFR with a little bit of IFR down south. And then for the afternoon, tomorrow, Sunday afternoon, we've got IFR now moving in, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay on up, spreading up towards the passes there, probably not until early tomorrow evening. So it'll be marginal VFR, Prince William Sound and the Coast Range here, VFR, Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, just about all the central western interior. We've got some marginal VFR slipping on down there across the western Arctic coast and north slope, north of the Brooks Range, and lower conditions persisting here with that very slow-moving trough with areas IFR from the 40-mile country all the way up there to the Arctic Ocean. Marginal VFR really not all that bad here for the Alaska Peninsula Pribilofs, and becoming VFR for St. Lawrence Island, and just a real narrow band IFR out there with that front over the far western Aleutians. That's gone Monday morning. Marginal VFR, some VFR showing up, Adak and Atka, otherwise marginal right up close to the southwest coast into Bristol Bay here. VFR through the strait. IFR still hanging in over the eastern interior from the Alaska Range up to the eastern Arctic coast. And some pretty good VFR over the interior, although along the Alaska Range here kind of marginal. And North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, marginal VFR up into the probably the Talkeetnas, the Wrangels, and IFR in areas down across the southeast coast. Then for the afternoon, IFR more over toward the border and up toward Lynn Canal and Glacier Bay. Still an area IFR up here oscillating around from eastern Alaska Range north all the way up into the Arctic Ocean there in the Beaufort Sea coast. VFR remains out here over the central western interior, back to the marginal out along and just off the coast here, right up back into St. Lawrence Island with marginal VFR, that pattern covering much of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Anatuvik VFR tomorrow, as well as Adigan, looking really good up there. And for the western Alaska Range, Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. Now, there may be a little more cloudiness, hopefully staying VFR for rainy, but won't be clear. And windy, probably marginal at times throughout the entire day. Same forecast for Isabel, marginal VFR at times, as well as Mentasta. And for Tanita, VFR with some moisture sliding up from the southeast, possibly going marginal on the eastern entrance here very late in the day or probably tomorrow evening. And then for Portage, VFR becoming marginal, possible IFR late tomorrow for the eastern entrance. And then Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels, definitely a cold air mass across just about all the state here, 2,000 feet over the Queen Charlottes, and way down there south of the Aleutians, but at the surface here, cutting across on Alaska, east of Kodiak Island, back up toward Cordova, and then bisecting the Panhandle. For the icing possibilities, really nothing too significant. An area here slipping northwestward across the Panhandle here, so becoming less down south, but still another batch slipping on up, and some icing spreading northwestward into the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound area. A little bit of leftover stuff for Kodiak, and with that weakening front way out to the west there. Taking a look at the jet stream, that front is being held back and weakening due to this strong ridge of high pressure right over the Bering Sea. You've got one branch of the jet breaking through the Pacific jet, the strongest part, breaking underneath. And then we've got the cold northerly winds here aloft coming down, 50 to 70 knots right along the west coast, and a trough low center, cold upper low there over just about centered over Barrow. Another one here just south of Kodiak. Return flow southeast pulling that moisture back up later tomorrow in along the North Gulf Coast and locally into southern Alaska, and otherwise the main jet staying south of the Panhandle. For 9,000 feet, looking like this, northerlies 30 to 50 knots here in the west, southerlies out over the western Aleutians, and southeast flow 15 to 20 along the Panhandle, pretty light over the interior. Same pattern at 3,000 feet. We've got 20 to 30 to 40 knot winds here in the west with southeast, about 30 knots in a narrow band for the North Gulf Coast. Taking a look at turbulence, With those winds, moderate chop here covering much of the southwest part of the state from the Alaska Range down into Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula. Light to isolated, moderate to the Yakutat area.
Let's pretend that this is going to be our runway. Okay, we're going to keep our airplane centered down the runway by applying...
Remember how your instructor kept telling you to work the center line, to keep the aircraft lined up with it and land on it? That doesn't always apply in a crosswind situation. You can line up and land on the upwind side of the center line. That'll give you more room to work with if you get pushed sideways during your flare. Expect to work the controls all the way down to the ground to adjust for changes in the wind. But if you favor a crab approach, you'll have to make a transition to a side slip prior to touchdown. Otherwise, when you land, you'll be pointed off the runway. The transition from crab to side slip is the most critical phase of the crosswind landing. For the transition, lower the upwind wing into the wind as you add opposite rudder. You'll need extra opposite rudder at first to get the nose aligned with the runway, then ease off the rudder pressure. If you find yourself getting pushed sideways, increase aileron deflection into the wind and add more rudder to compensate. You should touch down on the upwind main gear. Many new pilots are uncomfortable landing on one wheel. They may feel the airplane is less stable. Nevertheless, that's how it has to be done. Maintain control inputs to compensate for the wind on rollout and during taxiing as well. Turn ailerons into quartering headwinds and hold elevator control in the neutral position for nose wheel airplanes. For tail wheel airplanes, hold the elevator control in the aft position. Turn ailerons away from quartering tailwinds and move the elevator control forward for both nose wheel and tail wheel airplanes. If your turn off the runway puts the wind to your back, push forward on the yoke as you make the turn. This is especially critical in tail wheel airplanes, where the center of gravity is aft of the main gear. Without proper elevator control, the wind can lift the tail and make the airplane weather vane or turn into the wind unexpectedly. The idea is to keep the elevator in a position so the wind is always pushing down on it to keep it from lifting off the ground, and keep pressure on the tail wheel to maintain directional control on the ground. And whether a tail dragger or not, strong winds can lift and flip light aircraft that aren't properly maneuvered on the ground. Any crosswind that affects landings affects takeoffs as well. If taking off in a crosswind, you can start your takeoff roll on the upwind side of the center line. Aileron should be fully deflected into the wind as the takeoff roll begins and should be lessened as speed increases. You need the full deflection to compensate for the aircraft's relatively slow speed in comparison to the wind at the start of the roll. If you don't decrease the deflection angle, as the aircraft leaves the ground, the wing can drop sharply. This is especially true if the crosswind is coming from the right. You'll already be holding right rudder to compensate for the torque and P factor on the takeoff roll, so as you lift off, you won't have the opposite rudder to hold the nose straight as you leave the ground. As in the pattern, add speed before rotation to compensate for gusts. This will help prevent your dropping back onto the runway when a gust suddenly dies. As soon as practical, transition to a crab to compensate for the wind on climb-out. Practicing crosswind landings goes a long way to giving you better control over the aircraft in all phases of flight. And they're easy to practice almost any day with wind, even if it's coming right down the runway at your airport. Just select a nearby airport with more than one runway or one that's not aligned with the wind. Request low passes over the runway the wind is blowing across. Fly your usual crosswind pattern and approach, descending to about 50 feet above the runway. Fly over the runway at short approach speed, compensating for the wind with a side slip. Do a go-around at the departure end, climb back into the pattern, and repeat as necessary. At first, you'll probably be blown to the downwind side of the runway, or overcompensate and drift to the upwind side. But do it a few times, and you'll find your skills will probably improve dramatically, without the pucker factor of actually having to put the airplane on the ground. Learning these lessons is what experience is all about. It's the cumulative knowledge that comes from dealing with the unexpected and correcting small errors before they become big problems. You'll find your pilot certificate opens up whole new worlds for you. Using it safely is the key to getting the most out of it. And if you're ever in doubt about the wisdom of what you're about to do, just listen to that voice in the back of your head. Congratulations again on earning your Airman Certificate. Use it wisely and use it well.
This video is a new way of giving safety information to pilots across the nation. We think it's a unique way to spread the safety message, and safety is very important to all of us. AOPA was founded in 1939 to make flying safer, more affordable, and more fun. A decade later, the AOPA Air Safety Foundation was established.
The AOPA Air Safety Foundation was created for one purpose. That's to make general aviation easier and safer for all pilots. And we're proud to have played a part in reducing general aviation accidents by nearly 75%. We do this in a variety of means that includes research, safety seminars, and producing publications like this one. And all of this is funded by contributions from pilots like yourself.
If you'd like to know more about AOPA or the AOPA Air Safety Foundation, please call us or visit our website. And safe flying.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Really filling in up here, especially north of St. Lawrence Island the last couple of days. And now with those north winds and temperatures below zero, seeing some fairly rapid southward progression of the sea ice here south of St. Lawrence Island, and a little bit here pushing back to the west. That's going to continue for the next couple of days. So finally, winter conditions finally taking hold of the northern Bering Sea. And for the coastal water forecast for tomorrow along the southeast coast here, pretty uniform, all east, 20 knots, seas ranging from 8 feet in the north to 12 feet down south. Northerly gales for northern Lynn Canal tomorrow, possibly some higher gusts. Small craft advisories for Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait, light southeast of 15, 4-foot seas. And then those pick up the next day on Monday, southeast 20 gusts 35 knots, sea still at 4 feet, now east 25 gusts 40 knots for Stevens Passage. And northerly gales continue, at least for another day there for northern Lynn Canal. Small craft advisories here along the coast, southeast 25 on the south coast, east 25 on the north coast with the highest seas of 12 to 13 feet in the southern coastline. Then for Prince William Sound tomorrow, north winds 20 knots, northeast 20 gusts 40. For the eastern North Gulf Coast, with those gusts out of the Copper River Delta, north 20 gusts 30 here for the western North Gulf Coast. Then into the gales, Barren Islands, north 35, increased to northwest 35, back there toward Kachemak Bay, north 25 south of the Forelands, otherwise northeast 10 for northern Cook Inlet. And for Monday, northeast 15, a little bit of an increase, not too bad though for the areas north of the Forelands. Small craft advisories south of the Forelands with 25 knot winds. Northwest gales here, Kachemak Bay turn northerly for the Barren Islands with 8 to 9 foot seas. Less wind for the western North Gulf Coast here, northeast 15, 6-foot seas, and still east 25, small craft advisories for the eastern North Gulf Coast. And the winds down to 15 out of the northeast of Prince William Sound with seas falling to 3 feet. And then for the move along here for Kodiak Island tomorrow, northwest 30 knots, Shelikof Strait and the east side of the island there with seas 7 to 9 feet. Northwesterlies here extend all the way down to Cape Sarachef from Sitkinak, 35 to 40 knots here, strongest up towards Sitkinak with north side 35 out of the north, Bristol Bay, north 30 knots, 8-foot seas. And then for Monday, northerly gales here continue right across the peninsula up to 40 knots here on the Pacific side, 15-foot seas on the Bering Sea side, north 30 for Bristol Bay, and northwest 40 knots from Castle Cape to Sitkinak, 11-foot seas, 30-knot winds, northwesterlies continue there for Kodiak Island. And for the Fox Islands tomorrow, for Unalaska Island, northerlies 25 to 30 knots there, 11-foot seas, and then easterlies here in Nikolsky at 20, pick up to 30 knots from the east for Adak and Atka, southeast 35 from about Amchitka to Attu Island. And for the Monday outlook there, that front really weakening considerably, but still carrying some small craft advisory winds out west at 25 from the south, but just 15 knots, turning east at 10 to 15 for the central Aleutians. And then still strongest winds here across Unalaska Island, 30 to 35 knots out of the north. And for the southwest coast, tomorrow, north 35 south of Nunivak Island here, otherwise much lighter, about 20 knots on up to St. Lawrence Island, even lighter yet for St. Matthew. Pribilofs, north 20, 7-foot seas. Then for Monday, no change there for the Pribilofs, and northerly gales south of Nunivak Island, 35 knots, 10-foot seas. Still 15 knots for St. Matthew Island, about 20 knots for St. Lawrence Island. Moving up to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, central and eastern coastline, west-southwest at about 10, so less wind, definitely, so losing the wind chill advisories up there. By 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, west 15 here on the west side, and then 15 to 20 knot winds from Cape Beaufort to the Bering Strait. And for Monday, 15 knot northerlies there from Wales up to Cape Thompson, and really light winds now, light and variable along all of the Arctic coast, maybe a little more northeast and maybe up to 10 knots there over toward Demarcation Point, but really laying down wind-wise up there. And for tonight again, still some snow hanging tough here from, say your Eagle, possibly Northway, Toke, on up to the extreme eastern Arctic coast, but gradually shifting out. A little bit of moisture spreading northwest here, or west-northwest along the eastern North Gulf Coast. Eventually, tomorrow, you'll see, moves into Prince William Sound, so look for an increase in clouds and chance of light snow there. Otherwise, cold, mostly dry conditions over the interior. Still some lingering light snow here over the eastern interior, north of the Alaska Range. The front brings unsettled weather to the northern panhandle. A weakening front out west completely dissipates on Monday. And chance of snow, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound to the northern panhandle. That's a look at the weather. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.